Either way, we have another fantastic program. And if you didn't see the programs that we did the last 2 nights, I invite you to find those live streams on our YouTube, X, or Facebook. Either it's in lots of different places, and just powerful stuff. And sitting amongst us are people who have already spoken or will be speaking, who are impacted people by this issue. They are people who are murder victim family members, death row family members, the families of people that have been executed, etc. All kinds of people that have stories to tell, as well as the people doing this work. People from the legal community, people from the faith community, people from the activism community. And that's what excites me tonight, being one of those people that, thank God, I don't have a story to tell, right? But I do have a story to tell, because we all have a story to tell. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in terms of how I got here, because tonight is Amnesty International night. One of our partner organizations asked if they could convene and bring members of their team on the death penalty to DC to be a part of this and to share about the work and the philosophy of activism of Amnesty International. So my background is in photographic technology. I went to school back when we used dark rooms and film and all of that, and I was working at a place called AT&T Bell Laboratories back when we had the monolith of AT&T. And my job that day was to go and photograph. One of the employee clubs was having a speaker, a guy who was talking about his experience escaping from the refugee camps in Cambodia. And I went and I did my job. I listened a little bit. It was kind of interesting. I wasn't really paying attention, but I got the pictures that I needed. And on my way out, a man had a table, like one of those little banquet tables, 8 foot long. And on the table, just one thing, a little stack of Amnesty International brochures. The blue one, it says, when the first few hundred letters came. Those of us who are older know about that one. It's one of our favorite brochures, because it's so stark and drives us right in. Well, I picked one up, and I do want to acknowledge the guy that was standing there was a fellow employee at AT&T Bell Laboratories, Dave Dalton. He is responsible, because he went and had what I think is one of the best actual activism things, was to just give you one choice. There wasn't a whole table full of stuff. There was one choice, one flyer. I picked it up, and I read it while I ate my lunch, and I filled it out. I said, I could be a part of this. And I sent it in, and I checked the box to tell me about the nearby student group, because I was still pretty much very young, and I thought I'd be better with a student group than a community group. In any case, eventually I got a letter back. He told me who to call. I called. Eventually, Kyle Dreyfus called me back and invited me to a meeting, and I was shocked when I got there. And the speaker was talking about the death penalty. Adele Shank, a Capitol Defense Attorney in Columbus, Ohio, was talking about the death penalty. And I heard about Amnesty as an organization that worked to free prisoners of conscience, people in prison for their beliefs, their religion, their language, their skin color, their identity, who had not used or advocated violence. I was okay with that. I knew they worked to get fair and prompt trials for political prisoners. And the third part that I didn't pay as much attention to was to stop torture and executions in all cases. So I was shocked when I heard this person telling me about why we need to get rid of the death penalty, and I argued with her. I said an eye for an eye. I said, this is the United States. We have the best justice system in the world. If that includes the death penalty, okay, I'll pull the switch myself. Welcome, come on in. There's a couple of seats right up here. And you can pull out the chairs that are there. So I said I'd pull the switch myself. So they tolerated me in that Amnesty group, because I would actually get up at meetings and say, you don't have to do all the things that they're talking about doing. And you always get a choice, right? But for me, it was, I was an annoyance, I'm sure, to the group coordinators. But at the end of the day, I set out to prove those Amnesty people wrong. And in trying to prove them wrong about the death penalty, I found out that everything I believed about the death penalty, the truth was the opposite. I thought we had a system that was fair. I thought we had a system that always got it right. I thought it was what victim families wanted. I thought it cost less, and I was wrong. And I got to change my mind. The thing that made me change my mind on this issue was learning, and again, at an Amnesty conference in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's a whole story about how I got there. But at the end of the day, Professor Michael Andrews, campus group coordinator or staff, faculty sponsor at Xavier University in Cincinnati, was there speaking. And he used Ohio statistics. I'm from Ohio. He said, if you're going to kill somebody in Ohio, just don't do it in Franklin County, Cuyahoga County, or Hamilton County. That's Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati. And the same holds true for any county with a large tax base, like Lucas County, Toledo, and Montgomery County, Dayton, and so on. And I remember sitting in that lecture hall, I had in my mind the image of a white picket fence and jumping from one side of that to the other, when I realized that what matters more than the severity of the crime is the location of the crime and the budget of the prosecutor who serves that county. And this is true. If you look at the Death Penalty Information Center, they've got a map that shows, that breaks the death penalty down, not by state, but by county. And if you look at the death penalty by county, then you see these tiny little dots around the country. Fewer than 2% of the counties account for most of the executions that take place. There's so many other things about the death penalty that I learned, that we get to learn, that help me understand that it's an unfair system. And those 4 words that are carved into the face of the U.S. Supreme Court building, equal justice under law, is an aspiration that is nothing more than a lie. We do not have equal justice under law. And, you know, it's kind of funny because if we were in front of the court, you could see it's wearing a mask. It's all blocked off by whatever scaffolding and a screen and all that. And I asked the police officer what they were doing. They said they were refurbishing it. And I said, well, are they chiseling off? Right? And she laughed and she said, I hope not. And, you know, but that's the reality of our system. And there's so much more. And again, if you watch these, the last couple of nights, you'll learn about that, especially Rob Dunham's presentation about the various legal issues that are happening. But what happened to me is I got bit by the human rights bug. And for me, Amnesty International was it. I mean, if I had a tattoo, and I have no tattoos, but if I had one, it would be an Amnesty camp. That's how dedicated I have been to this organization. I was an area coordinator. I was on the board of directors. I became a state death penalty abolition coordinator for a while, which I'm grateful to be in the space with so many people who are volunteer leaders. And I will also say, you're going to hear about this too, but Amnesty is looking for people to fill these kinds of positions in various states across the country. And that's another thing that we who are here in this room can be thinking about, and also people that are watching us online. Who do you know that might want to step into some level of responsibility in fighting the death penalty in their state? And you'll hear about that tonight. Finally, before I start, you'll be hearing this voice tomorrow, but I want to acknowledge a board member of Amnesty International, Phyllis Bertrand, is here somewhere. Where's Phyllis? There she is. So 18 years on the board of directors, off and on. 18 years, right?
18 years until September.
Well, she's about to come off it, make some room for other people. But point is, there's lots of space for leadership in this movement. And what you're going to hear from tonight are many leaders in this movement. And in fact, everybody in this room today is a leader in this movement, just by virtue of being here. So I welcome you. I'm grateful for you. I'll just share for those who have never been in this building, if you need to, down the hall, just keep going past the area where you came in and around, and that's where you find the bathrooms. So we've got drinks in the back, etc. If there's any questions, I'll be sitting in the back, and I'd be happy to help. So with that, I'll introduce my friend and colleague and an inspiring young individual who's been jumping in on this work in our work in Alabama, the state death penalty abolition coordinator for Alabama. TJ Riggs is here.
Well, thank you all so much. Thanks, Abe, for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here with you all on day 3 of the annual Fast and Vigil. We've heard some absolutely amazing stories the past couple days, and I always find these spaces to be very rejuvenating and energizing and truly really beautiful. So thank you all. So today, I've known the last couple days we've heard a mix of everything from really beautiful stories to stories of deep sadness and heartbreak and of loss and grief and mourning. And I today want to share with y'all a story of hope coming from what I believe is a very unlikely place. So my journey with Amnesty started, I guess, a little over 4 years ago now. I was freshly 18, went to Stanford University in Birmingham, Alabama, and in my first semester, I took a class called Power and Politics, and my professor, who's now a long-term advisor and mentor for me, Dr. Fred Shepard, was a long-time LC for Amnesty and had been involved in a number of different ways. And he taught us in that class about the human rights boomerang cycle and this idea that what we do here can affect policy across the nation, it can affect policy abroad, and that we are uniquely in a position in a place like the United States where up until maybe most recently, we had the ability to really speak our minds and do what we feel is necessary to pressure leaders into making right decisions. And so he made an announcement at the end of the semester and asked if anyone was interested in Amnesty. And so I showed up to the meeting and I was the only one there. It was myself and Dr. Shepard. And so I kind of became the de facto president. I was like, what do I even do with this? And I got in contact with the Amnesty folks from the national office, which is where I met my amazing supervisor, Amanda Armstrong, who hates being shouted out. So she's going to smile all silently over there. Yeah, please. And I got introduced to the Rocky Myers campaign. And so I said, Rocky Myers, who is this? And I did a little digging, and what I found really, really, really deeply terrified me, it worried me, and it made me sad for justice in this country. So Rocky's story, you can see him over here, and his story of injustice, I should say, began in 1991 in a small town called Decatur in northern Alabama, just outside of Huntsville. Again, a very poor town, not a ton of racial diversity. And Rocky, so there was starting from the beginning, a woman named Ludie Mae Tucker was robbed and stabbed. Someone came to her door asking for directions, knocked, came inside, stabbed her, ran off, and took the VCR. Now, she was still alive at the time that the police showed up, and they asked for a description of her attacker, and she described him as a short, stocky man wearing generic white clothing before she unfortunately lost consciousness and passed away. So the police canvassed the neighborhood over the course of about a week, and within just a few days, they had 3 witnesses who put an original suspect, a different guy than Rocky, at the scene. So the first was a neighbor who testified that she saw a man wearing a bloody stained white shirt running in between her and Ludie Mae's house on the night of the murder. And 2 others were local drug dealers who testified that this man came and tried to trade a VCR for drugs on the night of the murder. So the original man was arrested, and unfortunately, his father was very well connected in the town that he was in, as a lot of these stories go, and he was able to hire a private investigator who, after some sort of malfeasance, we don't really know, was able to get all 3 original witnesses to recant their testimony, while a dishwasher who happened to work at the restaurant owned by the original suspect's father came forward and pointed the finger at Rocky. So Rocky was arrested. At this time, instead of simple murder, like the original suspect's charge, he was charged with capital murder, which is the only charge up until pretty recently in Alabama that can carry a death sentence. And there was no forensic evidence tying him to the crime. The only thing that they used to convict him was the fact that he could not keep a storyline straight during during interrogation, even though he had been tested multiple times throughout his life to have an IQ under 80, making him mentally disabled and unable to keep a storyline straight. So he was tried. His original attorney was also a member of the Klan, so didn't really do a great job. pretty much abandoned him throughout the trial proceedings. And he was convicted by a jury of 11 white people and 1 black person. Interestingly, they convicted him and sentenced him to life without parole. But the judge then took the step to sentence him to death in a process known as judicial override, which has been banned in Alabama since 2017, when we became the last state in the country to ban judicial override. Unfortunately, that decision was not retroactive, which meant Rocky was and had been stuck on death row in Alabama for almost 30 years. So when I got to Amnesty, we had just picked up his case as part of our Individuals at Risk program. We identify individuals that we believe to be representative of sort of widespread issues with institutions such as the death penalty. And as I really got into this case and dug into it, I mean, I really couldn't believe the things that I was seeing, the things that I was reading. And I always tell people that I would bet my left leg that this man was innocent, that he did not commit this crime. Even then, right, I don't believe we should execute. It's, again, as we've heard throughout the week, wrong for so many other reasons in so many cases. But in the case of innocence, in the case where we have the wrong person on the row, the idea that we would go about executing them is just unconscionable. So after my first semester with Amnesty, my first year as president, there was an opening and they asked me to step into the role as the Alabama State Death Penalty Abolition Coordinator. So I took over and sort of helped lead advocacy on Rocky's case. And for a while, we were very stagnant. For as many things as we did, we had spotlight campaigns where we were given funding to run ads and to place newspaper placements, radio ads, send letters, make phone calls. And nothing happened, right? We heard nothing from the governor. All the while, we're continuing to execute people, as we heard last night about Kenny Smith. All happened over the course of this time as well. In 2024, Rocky became one of the cases for our Right for Rights program, which is sort of our largest international campaign, and saw over 800,000 letters and actions taken from around the world, from over 70 different countries, for Rocky, and still nothing. And so I knew kind of in the back of my mind that Rocky's case was going one of 2 places. It was either going to stagnate for the rest of likely his life, or they were going to fast track it and try to execute him before we could respond. And so I kept, plodding away at the work. We worked on different executions that happened in Alabama throughout the time, focusing our energy on things like legislation that could overturn things like the judicial override decision. And again, we just continued to stagnate. And then it was Christmas of 2024. I remember it was like maybe 4 or 5 days before Christmas, because I just got into my grandmother's place. And I got an email from one of my coworkers that said, I need to call you. Can we talk urgently? Which was weird because that doesn't happen very often. And so I called him and, he said, I have some really bad news. And immediately my heart sunk because I knew what that meant. And I was told that Rocky was going to receive a death warrant and that they had applied for a warrant in his case, which would mark the beginning of execution proceedings for him. And so I sort of panicked and I was like, oh my God, what do we do? And then took a breath and we talked about it. And so we came up with a plan to assemble as many people from around the state of Alabama and the Southeast that do death penalty work, that do criminal justice work, that do special needs advocacy, that do anything related to Rocky's case, to try to get this message out there, that we cannot kill Rocky Myers. And so all throughout January, we planned and we emailed people and we built together this amazing coalition that I thought we could have a really, really great campaign with. And so we met together on this wonderful Clemency Coalition call, planning to sort of decide what we were going to do, how we were going to attack it. And the lawyers got on the call and told us that they had gotten word that morning that they had 48 hours to get everything to Governor Ivy's legal review team to review clemency. She was either going to grant clemency that week or she was going to sign the warrant and begin the 30-day waiting period till we could schedule could schedule his execution. So that again sent us into a little bit of a panic, a quick spiral, but a lot of amazing people, talented people, people who can work in a crisis, and we came up with a plan that involved us talking to anybody and everybody that could have Governor Ivy's ear. We talked to people who were on the YMCA board with her, her pastor, anybody that could potentially get through to her. And so we set all of this plan into motion, and then we waited. And I figured maybe it would be the end of the week, Maybe it would be the next week. Maybe we wouldn't know until they had already decided that they were going to schedule an execution date. So I tried to put it out of my mind as much as you can with things like this. And I remember waking up Thursday of that week. We had our meeting on Monday. And I opened my email looking for any news. And the first thing I saw was that I got rejected from the law school of my dreams that I was applying to that day. And I was like, man, what a shitty day, you know, what a terrible way to start the day. And I remember at 4 o'clock, it was February 28th, Mr. Abe Bonowitz sent me nothing but a link to an article that said Governor Kay Ivey commutes Rocky Myers' sentence. And I like fell on my knees. I was like, no way this is right. And I had like 19 phone calls to everybody, and we're just like screaming and crying and just so happy that even if it meant that he was going to have to spend the rest of his life in prison for a crime he did not commit, at least he wasn't going to die at the end of March. And it still, I think, is really difficult for me, and it was difficult for me at the time to celebrate knowing that a life sentence is still a death sentence at the end of the day, and that he still would never be able to spend time with his kids and his grandkids like he deserves. But at the same time, knowing that he could continue to live, continue to be with his friends on the row, or at least speak with his friends on the row, was really comforting, and was a sign that in a state where someone hasn't been executed, or sorry, someone hasn't been commuted off death row since 1999, and no Black person has ever been commuted off of Alabama's death row, that change can happen and that progress is possible. And as a 21-year-old, that's a really good thing to find out. So that's my story. I would love to talk to anybody else who wants to talk about it. I love talking about it. But really, I mean, this is the work of and the result of the work of dozens of people, dozens of organizations, and frankly, hundreds of thousands of activists from around the world that took a moment to write a letter, to send an email, to make a phone call, or to take a picture with a sign that says, "Don't execute Rocky Myers." Thank you, guys. That's enough for me. I would now like to introduce Mr. Bill Kissinger from the Freedom Channel to talk about his story. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Who all was here this afternoon? Earlier today? Well, you can testify that the rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated. We had a medical emergency today, and I kind of passed out for a little bit. I was treated very good by Kathleen and a couple of others. I feel really good now. So I want to tell you about my story. And if you didn't catch it last night, I'm going to start out and tell you I'm an ex-offender. I was in prison in Angola, one of the worst states in the country, for 47 years. It's a long time. I've changed. No one who experiences the living death, because I had life without parole, which is a death penalty. No one who experiences that for any length of time is ever going to be the same person that they were at the worst moment in their life, which happened to be the worst moment of the victim's life. A channel of events come together and meet in the most horrible circumstances that you can imagine. This is what happened with me. I was a drug-addicted Vietnam veteran who was angry at the world, who thought everybody owed me something, and I made poor decisions. So that's how it all started. To make it real short, I got a life without parole sentence, went to prison, and began the journey that leads me to today. And I want to thank Abe for this because him and Brandy encouraged me to take the next step on this journey. I've always opposed the death penalty, and I'll tell you why. Two main reasons. One, right now, there's a guy on Louisiana's death row, Jimmy Chris Duncan. He is an innocent man. He was charged, tried, and convicted on junk science, bite mark evidence. If you've read anything about forensic evidence, you know that bite mark evidence is about as reliable as me going outside and screaming for the first murderer to come up and meet me. There's scientifically, it's garbage. You had two doctors, Hain and West. They built a $1 million empire by selling testimony to juries and prosecutors at the behest of the prosecutors. Jimmy Chris Duncan fell into that group. Prosecutors presented Dr. Hain, Dr. West, esteemed technologists, esteemed technicians, very wise in the ways of the world. And they sold this to the jury. They had, the second element was jailhouse informants. How reliable are they? Everybody wants something. DA don't want to give it to them. Junk science, jailhouse informants, low literacy jury, slimy prosecutor, death sentence. Jimmy Chris Duncan has been on death row for over 30 years for a murder that never happened. The facts of his case are terrible. It's a horrific thing, but it didn't happen. The victim was an infant who suffered from seizures. Jimmy was a dope fiend who was getting back with a girlfriend and volunteered to babysit while she went to work. Incident happened, terrible thing. Baby suffered a seizure. I don't want to make it short. Baby suffered a seizure and drowned. And a few days later, Jimmy found himself charged with first-degree murder. In Louisiana, carries a death penalty. So to make it a little shorter here for you, it took science to undo junk science. It took real dedicated people to discover the web and connections of these doctors. This is a late event. Those doctors have been discredited in cases all across the South. They had built this. You're a prosecutor in Alabama, who you want to call? You're trying to prove a case on nothing, you call Dr. Hain. He calls Dr. West. They get together and they come and do this. You're in Mississippi. You're a prosecutor. You got to get this guy. What do? You call Dr. Hain. He calls Dr. West. They talk to the jury. You got another death penalty. At least 13 cases that these doctors worked on, the men have now been exonerated. 3 of those were men on death row. And we know, and I talked about it earlier today with Amnesty, the death penalty doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Let me give you an example. Just like Abe pointed out last night, since Greg, over 1,600 people have been executed. But at the same time, over 200 have been exonerated. They were going to get killed and were innocent. So if 200 of them happened, how many more? How many did we miss? How many did we not have the technology in our hands to stop it? So here's the amazing news. Jimmy has a bond hearing coming up this week. Tuesday, I believe it is. And he has a chance to put his feet on free ground with his family. The state's fighting it. They waited till the last minute to file an appeal on the judge's ruling that vacated his conviction and his sentence and said, you are clean. We'll start over. But they waited till the last minute and filed an appeal. What is that? That's not justice. That's not fairness. It's not balanced. It's vengeance. It's vengeance and corruption. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. But was it a mistake? They don't want to admit that they lied. They don't want to admit that they rewarded people for testimony. They knew at the time of his trial that Hain and West were running an operation. Now they're coming back in their appeal. It's in their appeal brief, they're saying, oh, these doctors were credible. They were credible when this happened. They had a good record here in Louisiana. Not so, as we later found out. But Jimmy Duncan could be free if it wasn't for vengeance. So what's the main element in the death penalty? It's vengeance. It's not a sense of justice. It's not a sense of, I'm going to get you back because you got me. It's just unfair. And we know that we make mistakes with it. So we've got to stop killing. We've got to stop. We've got to abolish the death penalty. I want to share one more thing with you. One more thing, and I'm going to try to be short with this. I have a story I wrote a while back called The Last Breakfast. It's available in a bunch of places. Harvard published it for me first. I would invite you to go to my Substack, WilliamKissingerSubstack.com, and read that article because it will touch you. If it doesn't touch you, you're in the wrong room. You're in the wrong room. I was asked to spend the last 24 hours of W. Gillis Williams' life. I was inmate counsel on death row and dealt with these guys on a daily basis. I got the little law books. I got their case law for them. I shepherdized their cases. I knew their kids' names. I knew their dog's name. Because it happens that way. You get to know the guys. And you know, they're not the same person they were when this stuff happened. It happens for different reasons. I knew Dobie. And this is how I met Sister Helen Prashon. Anyway, Dobie and I had become friends. We had become tight. And he asked me to spend his last 24 hours with him. Oh my God. What do you do? You know, and I talked to his lawyer, Paula Montoya. And it so happened that the night that he asked me that, and the night that the warden approved it, we stood at the bars, me on one side, he on the other, and we talked on the phone to Paula Montoya, his lawyer. It was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. Because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know, do you laugh with them? Do you joke with them and try to take the pressure off? What do you do? Do you rage? His lawyer was certainly raging. She was screaming, Dobie, there's nothing else I can do. And she was in tears. And I'm trying to hold it together. But what do you do? How do you act? How do you deal with this? So I did the only thing I could do, which was to let him hold my hand. He had arthritis terribly bad. And he was a young guy. He was 39 years old when the state of Louisiana murdered him. He was crippled with arthritis. And so he held my hand through the bars, and it felt like a lobster holding my hand. But it was the greatest feeling that a person could have. I'm sharing this man's dying moments with him. And we had breakfast together. We sat there and had breakfast. because that's what he wanted to do. Mostly what he did was shove the food around on his plate. Because what else can he do? But we had some moments of connection there that I will never forget the rest of my life. And we were together until they came and got him and said, Dobie, we've got to go. And they photographed him, and they fingerprinted him, and they weighed him, and they took his picture, because they had to make sure they're killing the right guy. That's how it is. And when they were carrying him out the door to the stairway, he had his hands shackled and his legs shackled, and he was waving at me. Dobie. But it's moments like that that make you understand that the death penalty's got to go. It's got to go. It's wrong. It's arbitrary. It's capricious. The black guy, the poor guy gets it. The white guy down here that works at an auto parts store, he doesn't get it. It's a class system, and don't tell me, you can't tell me that it's not. It's a money system. It's a class system. It's a social status system. And I hate it. And I want you to hate it too, because I want you to help me stop it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all that with us, Bill. I think that's something that's so critical as we undertake the work that we undertake, is that behind every story, behind every case file, there's a real human being with real interests and real friends and real relationships. And in so many cases, as Bill was saying, we're not executing the 18 or 19-year-old abused, scared, addicted child that may have committed the crime, but the person that's left in their place 20 or 30 years later. I want to next introduce a good friend of mine and a fellow SD PAC for New York and Massachusetts, Mr. Scott Langley.
Hi, everyone. A lot of you who know me as the Death Penalty Movement photographer. You may know me as co-founding Death Penalty Action with Abe. You may know me as the coordinator of the Fast and Vigil. And so I could be up here talking forever about everything that led me into that work. But I'm here just to do a quick PSA for Amnesty International, because maybe not all of you know, I am also, like TJ, an Amnesty International State Death Penalty Abolition coordinator, as TJ said, for New York and Massachusetts. And I've been doing this work for 25 years. I just realized that this summer marks the 25 years since I got involved with Amnesty, which I appreciate the applause, but Ron Kaz, a fellow state Death Penalty Abolition coordinator, has been doing it since 1977. So there's a long legacy and history of activists who are really dedicated to this work, that are dedicated to the work of Amnesty International, that want to devote our time and energy to carrying that message of human rights from the Amnesty International perspective. And that's what I do. That's what TJ does, Ron, Kathleen, other ones here in the room. So my PSA is to tell you that we need more people. Abe mentioned it in his opening, but we need more people because there are a lot of states, and our goal as a program is to have one state death penalty coordinator in every state. And we have 10 priority states that need coverage. And I'm not going to list them all, but I'm just going to say that things like Ohio are on the list. And I know there are people from Ohio in the room. We have Louisiana on our list. There are people in this room from Louisiana, Oklahoma, Florida. I don't want to keep going, but we need people. And the role of an SDPAC person is pretty simple. And it's something that's really kept me in touch with the movement in the various places where I've lived. I've lived in North Carolina, which at that time was the second most active executing state behind Texas. Now I live in the Northeast region where we have no death penalty. And in both those roles, Amnesty was very important. It doesn't matter where you live or what's going on in your state, there's a role for you. We need people on the ground like myself and the other SD PACs to keep an eye on what's happening locally and statewide and report that back to Amnesty International. We have amazing, fabulous people like Amanda working on the staff, but there's only so much she can do. And so Amnesty relies on an intense network of volunteers, not just on the death penalty, but all sorts of human rights issues. And we depend on people like you to step up and fill those roles to help Amnesty be the powerful organization it is. And those roles are things like working in coalition, like TJ spoke of, like working in that coalition in Alabama. It's networking with people to build this community of activists in your area. Amnesty International, for those who don't know, has an intensive network of student groups and local groups and communities spread out throughout the United States. And so our role is to maintain contact with those people and let them know when there are actions like the Rocky Myers case where people can take action. States like where I live, there is no active death penalty. It's still important because I can inform that network of Amnesty International activists in the Northeast region about things happening like Rocky Myers. There's a place for everyone to take action no matter where you are. And so that's part of the role that you can take, is to help inform. And that includes also legislative work, keeping an eye on what's happening legislatively with death penalty stuff in your state, and reporting back to Amnesty on what's happening, and helping using Amnesty as a resource to mobilize in your state, to get funding, to get people, to get all these things that are important to this movement to really make a difference. So I just want to strongly advocate for people who are interested in this organization and in that role to get in touch with Amanda, myself. I didn't mention G here on the front row, also STPAC all the way from California. We're all here to support each other and to do this work. And it's a work that I believe is worth dedicating time and energy, even when I'm already doing a lot of other death penalty things. This is still an important part of my work. So thank you very much, and hope to see you at the next Amnesty International conferences or training institutes.
Yeah, as you can tell, I come from a long line of really dedicated, amazing activists. So thanks so much for sharing, Scott. Yeah, especially for young people out there, this is who I can talk to best. Those that are with the high school groups. If you get to your college and they don't have an Amnesty chapter there, start one. Amnesty makes it super easy to do. We basically started with nothing at Samford, and we built it into a healthy group of over 20 active members at a school of only 5,000 people. So like, you can do it. So I highly recommend it. Next, I want to introduce another good friend, a dedicated abolitionist and a fellow STPAC from the state of California, Ms. Gavrilah Wells.
Thank you so much. I'm always shuffling bits of paper and forcing you to hold them as I take pictures. So that will be part of my talk probably. So like Scott said and TJ said, I am a state death penalty abolition coordinator for California. My Amnesty origin story goes way back. My mom was an Amnesty member, and I grew up with Amnesty in our living room. I grew up with a small group of folks drinking wine, writing letters, laughing, crying, and believing that these letters make a difference. She brought blank note cards to my school and would ask all the students in my class to draw pictures for people who were stuck in prison because of the painting they painted or of something they had said had imprisoned them, one a prisoner of conscience in Chile and one in Siberia. I grew up hearing Boris Pedro, she wrote poems about it. I grew up with that. These people were part of my family. And years later, when I was a sultry, salty, rebellious teenager, my mind was blown when Boris came over to my house. They had released him. They had helped him find freedom. These letters, this tiny group of, well-intentioned people sitting around a living room writing letters had helped this man find freedom, and he was now in my living room. So that flavored, without me even realizing, so much of who I am and why I am. Years later, we went to jail together, my mom and I. Both my parents were abolitionists. I grew up knowing that they, did Vigil with Marlon Brando and Sally Sanford out in front of San Quentin for Carol Chessman. I grew up believing in human rights. It was my ethos no matter what. So fast forward, I was very busy. I took care of my mom when she passed with dementia. And I was so busy, I was more of a clickivist for the years after going to jail, et cetera, with my mom. I did a lot of actions and protests, but I wasn't an Amnesty local member. When my mom passed and the horrors of this country started unfolding in 2016, back then, I thought, okay, I need a local group. I need to try out Amnesty. I know how effective it is. And so I joined a local chapter in San Francisco, and there just so happened to be a man who had been in my mom's Amnesty group. And that was a sign. And so I stayed with that group, and they made me the coordinator. And I'm trying not to be the coordinator anymore because I later became an SD PAC. Within the work in the group, there was somebody, Zoe, a colleague, who really started advocating for Kevin Cooper. Kevin Cooper is an Amnesty case. He is wrong. Amnesty can't say if somebody is wrongfully convicted until they are exonerated. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to just switch my hat here. I wear many hats. And I'm no longer going to be representing Amnesty in this talk. I'm going to be Gavrilah. Because what happened when I started meeting people on death row is my life was forever changed. Kevin was the first person I met in a cage. He came cuffed to the cage. Unlike, my heart goes out to people visiting people between plexiglass when you can't actually hug the person and get to know them, touching them. Like Bill was able to hold the hand of somebody before, through the cage, but touch is very important. Anyway, I advocated for Kevin for a long time, and then I started meeting other people. You visit people, you meet other people, and I grew many friends on California's death row. California has the largest death row in the country. I think we all know that here. We are just a little bit under 600. Depending on who you talk to, the numbers change. I have a spreadsheet, and it is linked to the locator. And so I follow it because last year, everybody on California's death row was transferred. People think, oh, how humane, how wonderful. They were transferred and mainlined, and now they're no longer on death row. The reason for the transfers was because of a proposition, Prop 66, to speed up the death penalty, to speed up the process of executions, just because it is so expensive, right? We all agree the death penalty is expensive. So there were two propositions back in 2016, Prop 62, Prop 66. Prop 62 was to end the death penalty. Am I speaking too long? Okay. If I do, I'll just, Abe, put up your fingers. A lot of people got confused about both propositions. There was another element. A lot of people do not want to vote for life without parole. Because as we all know, it is death by incarceration. So you're voting for another death sentence. That might have been part of the reason why Prop 66-1 and Prop 62 did not. Who knows? But Prop 66-1, and we are in a hell of a spot in California, because when we lose Governor Newsom, because he's going to be moving on soon, not moving on up, but like maybe, who knows? We don't know what his ambitions are. Everybody's saying presidential. In any case, California, and I'm part of an anti-death penalty coalition. I do want to say that with our anti-death penalty coalition, we are committed to also ending LWOP. Our first step is commuting the death row, and we're calling on Governor Newsom to commute the row. A couple days ago, we were all in front of the state capitol in Sacramento and calling different civil rights leaders were calling on Governor Newsom to commute the row. Incredibly compelling speeches, some of which has been mentioned by compelling speakers the last few days here. And also members of Drop LWAP. I am in both coalitions, the Anti-Death Penalty Coalition and Drop LWAP. I want to ask all of you, I'm sorry, this is a little disjointed. I do want to say, you know, with Jeff Hood, who was speaking straight from the heart, and Kimber, and all the people just saying such incredible, Dina. I mean, I am so moved and I am so terrified. Allie, when I hear you talk, I am terrified of becoming an executing state again, right? It is very, very scary, and it is possible. And so my heart goes out to all of you who are in community with people who are about to be executed, who go through the whole process. It's hard enough when people are being tortured in a cage and for years on end. I don't prioritize innocent people. Amnesty is, we're against the death penalty no matter what. I think everybody here in this room is against the death penalty no matter what. But I do have 5 cases on the table of people who are wrongfully convicted. And I ask all of you to please take a postcard. They're dear friends of mine. I have many other dear friends on death row. I'm a people person. I am all about connecting and interconnecting and personalities. And we have an app where we can actually communicate with the folks on the row. And my list is growing and growing and growing. I think you're like that too. Yeah, way too long. But I want to say Donna Larson is a dear friend of mine. I don't know if you're listening, Donna. Her son is one of the people that I have a postcard for, Keith Zondulan. Donna traveled with Journey of Hope. She is an incredible, incredible organizer, incredibly generous advocate. She advocates for absolutely everybody. She founded, I met her because she had founded a community of loved ones of folks on death row during COVID. And we got connected then. Anyway, she's a phenomenal advocate, mom, and I just would love if we all could do, at the end of this event, maybe do some strong prayer and thoughts for her, because she's been having some health issues, and I just want to lift her up. I know she's feeling better now, but Donna, I love you. I don't know if you're watching. And you've got a lot of friends here who know you and miss you and love you, and you're here in spirit with us for sure. I am tangential. I just want to say that I appreciate all of you so very much. It's been such an honor, and I'm in awe of each of you. And some of you have also been doing photo actions for Keith's website, which just went up today. I'm going to hit you up for more, as well as other photo actions. I'm going to hit you up, Bill. But anyway, thank you so much. Appreciate you all. And yeah, I didn't write this out. I think I probably went my allotted time. Let's end the death penalty and LWAP.
Thanks, G. All right, for our last speaker of the night, I'd like to invite Mr. Art Lafin up here. He's a Dorothy Day Catholic worker and a member of Journey for Hope, which, for those who don't know in the room, Journey of Hope is an organization made up mainly of murder victim family members who travel all around the country and in some cases the world to tell their stories and their experiences with both people on the row as well as victims. So thanks so much, Art.
How is everybody? Are you starving for justice? Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm very grateful to be part of this great conspiracy journey of hope for life. And I've been part of this fast and vigil for since 1996. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I just thought I would begin by reading a short reflection that I wrote about the fast and vigil. In front of the U.S. Supreme Court, we fast and vigil for 4 days, praying for a miracle, for an end to the death penalty. Abolitionists, death row exonerees, murder victim family members, those on death row and the executed, fast and vigil, appealing to the powers and all who can hear. Execute justice, not people. Break the cycle of violence and retribution. Practice restorative justice. Choose love, compassion, justice, and reconciliation. We fast and vigil for life in the name of our loved ones who have been murdered, in the name of all victims and their families, in the name of all those who have been and continue to be condemned to death. We vigil, we fast, we witness for life, believing that love can overcome violence and fear, believing that the truth can and will set us free, believing that the abolition of state-sanctioned murder is possible and will one day happen. We hunger and thirst for justice. We cry out for an end to killing. We are on a journey of hope. We are starving for justice. All right. So my story is a little different from others, but it's really through God's amazing grace that we're all here tonight. We live in a time where every person is a potential victim of violence. And that came home to me in a very powerful way on September 20th, 1999. At the time, I was visiting my family in Hartford, Connecticut. Anybody here from Connecticut? Besides anybody else? And I was visiting my dad, who was in the hospital. He was suffered injuries from a car accident, and my mother and I were there visiting my dad, and we received a message from a nurse who said something terrible has happened to your brother. And we were expecting my brother Paul to visit my dad in a few minutes, and he didn't show up, and we didn't know what was going on. And the nurse tells us something happened. And from that moment on, I was in a state of total shock and disbelief, because it actually came on the news shortly thereafter. But the nurse, we made a few phone calls, and my brother was leaving the Mercy Housing and Shelter Program in Hartford, where he worked as the associate director. There's a soup kitchen, and there's multi-service program for the poor and unhoused. And as he was leaving work, he was approached by a man who often frequented the shelter and the soup kitchen, and the man repeatedly stabbed my brother, and my brother died shortly afterwards. And anybody who's experienced the tragedy of losing a loved one, as you've heard already through different speakers, there's a sorrow that defies words. You really can't express the unspeakable pain and grief of losing a loved one. And so for me, it was just a time of tremendous sorrow. And we went back to my family house, and other family members came, and a priest friend who administered the last rites to my brother. And we began to share what happened, and we began to pray. I come from a Catholic Christian tradition, and words of prayer were very hard to come by at that moment. And you ask yourself, how is it possible that somebody you love, who is there, hours before, is now gone forever, forever. And so we began to pray and share and cry and, express our sorrow. And it was only at that moment in time that I really recognized, how powerful prayer can be, and the many people who expressed their love and concern and prayers for myself and for my family at that time. Now, just as this happened, there's a whole another dimension which you never expect to deal with. Here we are in total shock and disbelief, grieving, and then it becomes it's a big media story because my brother was well known, and so we're getting calls from the media, and even television, wanting to do interviews. How do you deal with a situation like that, And my mother, at the time, she was able to take a call from a religion reporter who we knew, who knew my brother very well, and she was able to do the interview. But one of the questions was, how do you feel about the man who killed your son? And my mother actually was able to say in that moment of tremendous grief, God forgive him, he didn't know what he was doing, and we have to pray for him. And so the journey into this nightmare, daymare, whatever you want to call it, of unspeakable pain and sorrow and grief, was almost unbearable. And yet, by the grace of God, I was able to lean on people who have experienced similar tragedies, and who knew this pain quite well. So 3 years earlier, I'm at the Dorothy Day Catholic Worker, where I live with my wife and son. Kathy's here, and many people that are able to receive shelter and support. And anyway, I got a call from Abe, who I didn't know. It was a call out of the blue, and the call was, there are people fasting and vigiling outside the Supreme Court, and would you be able to make a meal for breaking the fast. And I said, well, okay, that's something that we do. And I said, okay, when and where? Outside the Supreme Court at midnight on July 2nd. I said, okay, it's an unusual request, a midnight meal, but so that was my introduction to this community. And the next year, I was invited with others to be part of what's become a 5-year action on the steps of the unsupreme court. I say unsupreme court because there's nothing supreme about a court that sanctions killing. And so I was invited to be part of an action where we held a banner, 30-foot long banner on the steps of the court that said, "Stop executions." And for that action, 18 of us were all arrested, and we spent a fair amount of time in the lockups. And how many here were part of that action? Just take a look around the room. You have some of there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, 6. And that was in '97, okay. And then every 5 years since, there's been every 5-year interval, there've been people going up onto the steps and holding that banner and arrested. And so we ended up going to trial for that action. And I remember vividly hearing the testimony of people like Marietta Yeager Lane, whose daughter was murdered, 7-year-old daughter was murdered, and others. And I thought to myself, boy, I don't know if I could ever do something like that, be able to be part of a movement, where her daughter was murdered and she was able to eventually to forgive the murderer. And then to be, willing to risk arrest on the steps of the court. And so it was a powerful experience in a trial. And then little did I know, several years later, I would be a murder victim family member. And so I was introduced to the journey of hope, from violence to healing, and met Brother George and Suzanne and Marietta. Brother Bill Pelkey, he didn't have gray hair back then. And Sam Shepard, Reese, and Rick Halpern, and all the people that have founded this great movement for the Abolitionist Action Committee and the Journey of Hope and this fast and vigil. And it made a big impact on me. And I remember, after when I was going through this process of trying to deal with my brother's murder, talking with Marietta and George and Bill, and how helpful they were to me in those moments. And so when we got to the point of the funeral for my brother, it was an overwhelming scene, and there, so many people loved my brother, in shock and disbelief, and so I was able, by God's grace, to just turn to the Scripture, and that's where I found, so much hope and grounding to deal with this terrible moment. And I remember very vividly reading the Scripture passage in the Gospel where Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will obtain mercy." And so in my eulogy for my brother, I appeal to everybody that we have to show mercy and compassion toward Dennis Sutar, the man who killed my brother. And I'm just going to pass around a picture here and news article. Just keep it in the folder. And so I was able to invite people to pray for Dennis, and I knew that somehow, some way, we can all get through this together, you know. And it was really an extraordinary time because right after the funeral, I was able to actually meet with members of Dennis's family and to find out more about who this man was who killed my brother. And what I discovered was this is a double tragedy. It's tragedy for my family, but it's also a tragedy for Dennis's family and for Dennis. Because oftentimes you don't think about the murderer and the murderer's family. So I met Dennis's sister-in-law and later Dennis's brother at a Catholic mass. And then my mother and I actually went to mass. This is like maybe 2 weeks after the murder with Dennis's sister-in-law, who was a nurse. And we prayed together, and she shared about Dennis's story. And Dennis was suffering from extreme, severe paranoid schizophrenia. He'd been hospitalized 3 times, released each time onto the streets with no support system. The state of Connecticut had basically cut funding for the mentally ill, homeless, poor. And so Dennis was not on his medications. He was estranged from his family, and he was a threat to himself and others. And it resulted in the death of my brother. And so I knew that I had to pray for Dennis, and it turns out too that Dennis's sister-in-law's children were going to the same high school where my brother teaches. Another brother teaches at Catholic high school, and so what a small world, you know. And I remember Dennis's sister-in-law saying, conveying to me, she says, my daughter hates her uncle. Why did he commit this terrible act? You know. And so think about, you know, what the family is dealing with. But this whole tragedy showed me was, you know, that the only way that we can really break the cycle of violence is through love and compassion and mercy. And our government needs to provide the continuum of care for people like Dennis, so that future tragedies like what happened to my brother would not be able to happen again. And tragically, it continues in so many places. And so I invite you tonight, please, to join with me in praying for Dennis. So had Dennis been competent to stand trial, he would have faced the death penalty in Connecticut when this happened. He was found mentally incompetent to go to trial and received effectively a life prison sentence. And he's in a Connecticut prison hospital now. And so I ask you to please pray for him, that he can know God's forgiving love, and for his healing. Dr. King said, capital punishment is society's final assertion that it will not forgive. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu wrote this great book, There's No Future Without Forgiveness. And so I pray every day for that strength to, be able to have that capacity to show mercy and compassion. And I fail often, but we have to keep trying, because I deeply believe that is the key to dealing with breaking this cycle of violence. Dr. King also said, love, even for enemies, is the key to the solution of the problems of our day. And so when I think about what Jesus went through, here you have Jesus who taught his followers for all time to practice love and compassion and mercy. And when he's asked a question by Peter, his apostle, how often must I forgive? He said 70 times 7. 490 times is not the end. But you have to keep on trying to do it. And then you see Jesus being executed on the cross, being given the death penalty. And what is he doing but putting into practice this seemingly impossible command to love your enemies, right? And it's in that moment, I believe, that history changes, that Jesus inaugurated a new nonviolent era for humanity. And if we can only take to heart what that means, especially right now in this time that we're in. I just want to say a few more things, and then I'm going to close. I'll pass this around. This is a booklet that was done by the National Association for National Alliance on Mental Illness, and it addresses the role of mental illness in people who have experienced the death penalty and people who have been murdered. And it might be of interest to you. And so the movement to abolish the death penalty is a worldwide movement. And one of the great things that Bill Pelkey did was to introduce, I think, all of us to the community of Sant'Egidio in Italy. It's based in Italy, and they've become a worldwide leader in the campaign to abolish the death penalty. And I know George and Terry and Suzanne and others of us have been invited to be part of the Cities for Life campaign that happens every year on November 30th to call for an end to worldwide executions. And so when we think about all the people who are on death row here in the United States, we can never forget those who are on death row worldwide. And I don't know what the latest figure is. It's over 17,000 people awaiting execution. And so we can never forget them. And we thank God for the work of the community of Sant'Egidio, who works in close association with all the groups. And I want to thank God for Amnesty International and the great work that you are doing, especially all you young people here. It's very heartening to see what you are doing and your dedication. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Don't lose heart. We need you. And so I want to conclude by reading a message from Troy Davis. Does anybody here not know about Troy Davis? Could you raise your hand? Okay, a few people. You don't know who Troy? Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay. So Troy Davis was an African American who was convicted of murder and sentenced to death in Georgia despite evidence of his innocence. He faced 3 execution dates and spent over 20 years on death row before the state of Georgia finally executed him on September 21st, 2011. The case received worldwide attention, with numerous officials calling for his life to be spared. And Troy maintained his innocence until the very end. He offered these inspiring words to all who supported him shortly before he was executed. Troy says, "Thank you, and remember, I am in a place where execution can only destroy your physical form, but because of my faith in God, my family, and all of you, I have been spiritually free for some time. And no matter what happens in the days and weeks to come, this movement to end the death penalty, to seek true justice, to expose a system that fails to protect the innocent, must be accelerated. There are so many more Troy Davises. We need to dismantle this unjust system, city by city, state by state, and country by country. I can't wait to stand with you, no matter if that is in physical or spiritual form." So in solidarity with all the people worldwide who are working to abolish the death penalty, for all the death row exonerees who have been such a great inspiration to me. I don't know if some of you weren't able to hear Juan Melendez on Sunday night. 17 and a half years on death row in Florida, wrongfully convicted. Shuja Graham, I'll speak tomorrow night. Got to come back in there, Shuja. And so many more. But we thank God for this circle of life and hope. And we have to keep our eyes on the prize. Keep our eyes on the prize as we strive together to create the beloved community and to end state-sanctioned killing and to replace the current penal system, as it's known, with a system that's based on restorative, transformative justice. So thank you. Would you want a song now or at the end? Thank you all very much for listening.
All right, thank you so much, Art. Last, just a couple things. I'm gonna invite Abe up here to give some final closing announcements. A few things. Every year for Rocky Meyer's birthday on July 16th, we do a birthday card action. It's one of the things he looks forward to the most throughout the year. Last year we did a really cool sort of project where we sent postcards from all around the country, and he did sort of a virtual tour of the United States. This year we're sending him more birthday cards, so please, if you find the time, just go sign, wish him well. He really does look forward to them, and usually he gets enough letters that he's reading them until Christmas. So second, after Abe gives a couple announcements here, you'll notice we sort of Oprah Winfrey'd a poster under everybody's chair. We're going to do a photo action. So if you'd like to participate, just gather around. Amanda will make a quick announcement about that at the end. And we're going to get a picture, post it around. Amnesty's going to put it up on their socials. And just a good way to, again, show solidarity with so many people we have fighting across the world where they might not be able to do this in as open of a way as we can here. So yeah, without further ado, turn it over to Abe for some last. Oh, yes, Allie, please. Do you need a mic? Of course.
Hi, all. Allie Sullivan, Communications Coordinator with Death Penalty Action. We're starting something kind of new. We've never done it before, so we're just testing it out. But we are looking to create a new t-shirt design. Many of you know our Stop Execution, Stop Sign t-shirts. They've been all over the world in the media. But we are looking for some fresh energy in our merchandise. So we have a t-shirt design competition. If you type in that link, it's case sensitive on Google. If you are artistic or know somebody who is artistic and you want to throw your hand in trying providing us with an option for a new t-shirt design, we would invite that. I can put the link in the chat on the live stream, but it's bit.ly/DPA t-shirt contest. Generally, the dimensions are about 12 by 12 inches, not too huge, so that it can fit on the front of the t-shirt. And we are excited to see what folks contribute.
Yes, George. Yes.
My name is George White, in case you don't know. I'm one of the co-founders of Starvin. I think the end of my stamina for this session, Vigil, so Terry's going to take me back to the nursing center in the morning. But I just want to tell you, I am uplifted as always. It is so great to have all of you here. I love you all. Keep up the good.
Thank you, George. You haven't heard George's story. It's out there, but he shared the first night. It's found out on the live streams. So it doesn't seem like it's rained all that much, but we keep hearing the thunder, and we're watching the weather radar, and it's the possibility of dangerous storms continue through tomorrow morning. So we have those of us who are.
Can I make an announcement afterwards?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, hello. I was going to say that there are global, slightly a different accent on a different syllable, but the first Wednesday of the month around the world, groups of people are vigiling to close Guantanamo. Tomorrow's vigil, as the first Wednesday of the month in DC, is always at the White House. I'm going to go down there at noon. I don't know if anybody wants to join.
Well, if you want to join for the closed Guantanamo vigil tomorrow, check in with Gavrilah.
And then I was just going to say one last thing too that I forgot to mention. This is Chief, my dear friend, Chief Stankiewicz. This is Keith Sondulin. We have postcards here for everybody who's here. This is Timothy Young. This is Jarvis J. Masters. And Kevin, this is his artwork. I think I'm going to try to do it on a t-shirt. Submit something for a t-shirt. Kevin loves to speak to people, to classrooms, to students, to all groups of people about his case. He came just under 4 hours from execution back in 2004. He will, he's a brilliant, compelling speaker. So if folks do want to have somebody who is currently on death row partake in an event, please contact me and you too, whoever's out there. He would love to be a part of your event.
Thank you, Gavrilah. And there is so much and so many leaders here. And I know that there's many people that also, I'm sure, have things to share. So we're grateful that that we can all be together and learn from each other. And if you've got something to share, make sure you're speaking up. And not right this moment because we got to close it out, but there'll be an opportunity. And of course, we communicate and share things electronically. So a couple of things. One is last night we shared that Delaware was going to be voting, the Delaware state legislature would be having a vote on whether to prohibit the death penalty in the United States Constitution. And that vote did take place very late last night, and they did pass that bill. So I am doing my best to cajole somebody from Delaware to come and tell the Delaware story. But if not, I've been a part of that campaign for 15 years, and we'll be hearing about it a little bit more tomorrow. We'll be tolling that bell. And I want to invite you as you leave tonight. The bell is in the front area of the building, and you can check it out. That bell was tolled at the prison in Smyrna at the time of execution for almost all of the people that were executed in the current era of the death penalty. So since 1977, so there. And then when Delaware began, the Delaware citizens opposed to the death penalty decided that realized they have no more executions. They invited Death Penalty Action to come take the bell and use it to both promote the For Whom the Bell is Tolled campaign, which encourages communities of faith and anybody else to toll bells at the time of executions, and also to take it around. And we have tolled that bell outside the prisons or state capitals or state capitals in Oklahoma, Indiana, Alabama, Tennessee, did we do Tennessee?
South Carolina,
and coming to a killing state near you, Florida as well. Anyway, so there's that. You can check that out on your way if you want to give the rope a tug and toll it. Not too hard because we're inside, but I invite that. If you are new tonight and you would like a T-shirt like one of the ones that I'm wearing, or like what Marilyn is wearing back there, the green one says "Don't kill for me." They're right back there, and we'll set you up on your way out. Today, Religion News Service published an op-ed from our Death Penalty Actions Board Chair, Reverend Sharon Risher. She spoke here last year. Reverend Sharon Risher's mother and two cousins were among the 9 people killed by Dylan Roof in the Charleston church shooting that happened in 2015. So they've just been recognizing the 10th anniversary of that. And in any case, this op-ed talks about the fast and vigil, the historic Supreme Court anniversaries and why we're here now. It talks about also the racism that is exhibited in the fact that 24 out of the 25 executions so far this year were in revenge for the murder of white people. That's where the real racism is in the death penalty. It's in the race of the victim. 80% of the 1,632 people executed in this country since 1977 were executed for the murder of white people, even though people of color are the victims of murder half the time, and more so in some states. So please find that op-ed. It's right on the Facebook page or the Twitter page of Death Penalty Action, or you just search Sharon Risher or look at Religion News Service and find it and share it. Let people know. Amplify her voice, which amplifies our voice. Finally, tomorrow night, so the Fast and Vigil was started 32 years ago, okay? And my first one was 30 years ago. So this is my 30th Fast and Vigil. And there's a few people here who have been doing this quite a long time. Also, Ron Kaz, there's Tom, and other people have been here for a long time. We have a conversation to have once we finish with all the things, and that is whether we want to stay out tonight because dangerous weather is expected. And this will be the first time that if we don't stay out, that I'll sleep in a bed on this night in 30 years, which would be kind of amazing, but also, anyway, we'll sort that out. But that conversation has to happen quickly, and a decision has to be made among those who are considering staying out. So if that's you, when we finish with the group photo, we want a group photo, right? Okay, so before we break, we're going to do a group photo. But those of us that are thinking about staying out need to meet like in the hallway out here. We'll figure it out really quickly, whether we're going to continue to do that or release the guard to not stay all night to keep the building open for us. So that's an important announcement, right? And I think, and then finally, this event goes all day, June 29th, June 30th. Then starting normally, July 1st, we begin in the morning, go overnight to midnight tomorrow night. So even if you're not staying, we invite you to come back tomorrow. There's going to be another program like this starting about 6 p.m. tomorrow evening with death row survivors, murder victim families, other people that are experts on this issue. And then we'll spend some time kind of packing up and all that until we get to midnight. Well, actually about 11:15, we'll gather out there on the sidewalk in front of the court. And we do know that the weather is expected to be just fine for that. And we'll have a closing circle, and then we'll break our fast. Many of us are fasting. So you're all welcome to come. There'll be plenty of food. If you have the ability to cook something and bring it with you, then we invite that, but it's not necessary. But you're all welcome. Scott, is there any other announcements that we need? So we're going to have, Art is going to come back and take us out with a song. Art, are you still here? There he is. And then immediately following this song, everybody come up here and face that way, and we'll get a big group picture together. Okay, so here comes Art Lafin.
Okay. So can we give a round of applause to Abe and Scott, Allie on the tech, and everybody who's been part of this team behind the scenes doing great work. And so let's all just stand up and we'll sing a. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. No more killing in my name. We shall not be moved. No more killing in my name. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're standing for the victims. We shall not be moved. We're standing for the victims. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're standing for the condemned. We shall not be moved. We're standing for the condemned. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're standing for justice. We shall not be moved. We're standing for justice. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree
that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Great job, Paul.
Picture, everybody get your posters and picture.
Can I get the photos back in the?
Let me through.
There you go, George.
Does anybody see a t-shirt in a plastic bag? A brand one?
Is it that on the issue?
No, it's in a